I still got to be hungry for this recovery, because I'm going to tell you what happens after you get here for 10 years or 5 years or maybe 7 years or maybe even 3 years. Like you get like mundane, and like it's like, you know, oh man, like this isn't exciting no more, right? Is it like, it's not like it's like the enthusiasm of recovery. Like I'm passionate and enthusiasm about it. Like I love it still to this day. I love it because I'm still in the works and in the trenches, seeing the work that it does, that God does in other people's life just as much as he's done in mine. Thanks for having me, Cheree.
Thank you for coming out.
Yes, our kids are a wild thing to have here in sobriety now. I'm thankful that I get to celebrate, you know, or experience both the levels of that. I have one that I had in my disease, which is my daughter, which is like you know, daddy's best friend, and then I have 2 boys, and having those in sobriety is a big difference. And
big difference. Were you, when you had your daughter, because you said she's 20, were you in active addiction?
I was in. I was full blown in my disease and everything as a parent. A dad. I mean, I can't even call my dad. I couldn't call myself a dad or a parent or even kind of a father figure. Like everything I did with my daughter when she was around was not father approved in any way. And you know, all those single parents out there, I give it up to them. You know, because now today I'm a single parent, and I can, you know, like I sort of get to suffer the other side of that story of having a person out there in the disease. Right. You know, and
how was that, being a parent in active addiction, and, you know, her now being older? Has she talked to you about it? Have you guys had that conversation of what that did to her or what she was feeling? Yeah, I'm just curious.
I think a lot. As her life progressed and everything, we went into lots of different phases of her becoming a young woman, and I believe a lot of it I overcompensated for because I was in prison or away for so long of her life that when I got out and when I finally was present in her life, like she didn't really know if I was, you know, am I lying again? Am I telling the truth? Am I really stepping up to the plate, or it's just another fantasy of me just wanting to be in her life but still really addicted, you know? And I have to say, like, all the stories that came along, I was totally honest and blunt. Like I didn't hide nothing from my daughter about who I was and what I'd done, and to this day I still don't, you know. And when she got into high school, and especially in like more in her senior year, 11th and 12th grade, like we fought. We got into a big old fight. We got into a big old disagreement, and the stubbornness of her father and the stubbornness of the kid that she has. Like, you know, like we were at a little bit of a war. And
when do you think she started trusting
me and stuff?
Yeah, because you have how many years? You're a little under me, so 11? Coming up on 11.
I'm coming up on 11. Yeah, March 17th of 2013. You know, and so I'm coming up on 11 years, and that's crazy, over a decade. Yeah, and I will say that as a young girl, when I started just being present in her life consistently, and it seemed like all that stuff went away because I was never out more than a month or 1 month or a couple months, or even when I was out, I wasn't trying to see her. You know, I see her once or twice, and then all came along that she was staying with my dad and my stepmom. I'm in a treatment center, and then things happened in her life. You know, lots of bad stuff happened in her life by the way we were lived, and she was with my parents, and then that sort of just brought us together. And I'm so grateful that my parents let that, you know, that introduction, because it was just a whole introduction to a little girl that I didn't know. Where I was taking her around in the cars and doing a drug deal, you know, a mentality and a drug, as an addict would, you know, like stolen cars, selling drugs, all this stuff that a father shouldn't be doing. Like she was seeing stuff that she shouldn't see, you know. Yeah. And there I was thinking that was being a father, and I just started showing up, and my word became, you know, accountable to my word. Like I'm gonna be there that weekend to see you. I'm gonna see you. I started. I didn't have no money to do stuff, so it was just more like parks and just hanging out and watching a movie or doing anything that didn't really cost much. Right. And
which is everything for a kid. You know, I feel like really when it comes down to, I mean, me and my husband were talking about it when it comes to Christmas. Like why so many gifts? Like, there's not even a point, I feel, because they're not going to remember what they, even if you asked them now. I mean, Christmas was just a few weeks ago. If we were to ask our kids, what did you get for Christmas? Maybe they name one thing out of, the 5-6 presents that they get, where if, you make a memory with them, that's what they'll remember.
No, I agree about that.
So I feel like that's so important. I mean, I had an absent father, which is, I really resonate and connect with your story. He was absent and in prison majority of my childhood. And that was really hard. I mean, my mom did a great job at playing the role of both parents, but it doesn't change the fact of having the abstinence for a young girl. I mean, I see my little girl and the connection she has with, my husband and her dad. Like, it's a beautiful thing to see. And I didn't have that as a little kid. But I was around 13 when I was able to reconnect, and it was things like that, just memories, getting to know each other. That to me was everything. It wasn't, I don't know, I wouldn't have liked if he just came in and like bought me something, or, I just wanted to get to know him and build that relationship. And today we have a wonderful relationship, and it's crazy how it can go one way or another. It
was awkward for me. Like, I remember like the very first time, and I was going down there to see, I'm coming from a treatment center, so I'd ride like a Metrolink 6 hours to get to a place. And I remember it was like the first father or dad dance. And and I remember going there, but I also, as much as you want to be all about it, I remember the uncomfortableness for me as being there as a parent and not really knowing who this little girl is, but wanting to know her. And it was just so hard. And to be able to work through all that stuff, like, it takes a lot of work through, because like we had to really forgive ourselves in an aspect to be able to invite and be there for this, another human being. And I remember, man, it's like the dance. Actually, I sat to the side and I was watching her interact with her friends. And it was just like something grabbed a hold of you and all that,
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, and I remember I had my kids early in my recovery, a couple years into it, but I didn't have kids during my addiction. But I do remember getting drugs from people who had kids, or going places and using drugs around kids, and the guilt that I had, and just looking at them like, gosh, like, that's rough, that's really rough that we're in a trailer and we're smoking heroin off foil, and the babies are crawling around in diapers, and there's just crap everywhere, and it's like, I still knew, even though I was so screwed up on drugs and so high, and of course, addicts, we do those things, I still knew what we were doing was wrong, and it still made me feel really uneasy. I had to do a lot of repair work around that damage, because I felt guilty of an innocent child. So, I bring that up because for you, and there's a lot of parents out there that are still struggling with addiction with little ones, and what I've found now as a counselor is it's really hard for people to overcome, because once you take the Band-Aid away and you feel those emotions again, it's really hard to cope and accept and forgive yourself during those things. And you're a product of that you can do that, and you can rebuild the relationship, and I'm sure you have a good relationship with your daughter now. And she's how old? 20?
She's 20 years old. She goes to San Diego State College.
Wow.
Like, we early in our recovery, when I got sober and everything like that, I take her to meetings. I used to go to a meeting at the beach on the Sundays, and I try to surf. I didn't really know nothing about, but you learn new things as you come here into sobriety. And and she was always like, I want to surf with you, because her kids always want to do what the parent does for the most part, and even if you're in your disease, and
right.
And she started surfing. She went to school and I tried, but I tell you, I was just visiting her in college a few months ago, and we were both surfing.
Wow.
And that's a gift that you get,
absolutely,
of just being present and accountable
yes.
in the kid's life. And I don't have all the answers of the questions she may ask, but I'm gonna tell you that being present and accountable in her life. Like, she was in like band, and she was in and she was in music, and she was in parades, and I'm gonna tell you, and she was in swim, and I was there with my people, like just cheering and embarrassing her as much as possible. Because that's what we do as parents. We embarrass our kids.
Right.
You know? Like,
it's fun.
It's fun.
Like, I mean, why would we not?
Why would you not? Right? Like,
yeah.
Can you knock it off? Still to this day, I like to embarrass her. So,
yes.
You know, and that's just the thing. And I say that lots of stuff go, like the trust, and as they grow up and they get past this little kid and they get into a young adult, and like and that point that changes your conversations of a young little girl into a young woman is a lot different, you know. And
what a blessing that she's doing all those things. She's in swim and she's willing to surf. I mean, everything that she grew up going through, she could have easily went down the same path you did. I mean, 100%. How old were you when your addiction started?
Very 12. I remember being when my daughter was 12 or 11, 12 or 13, and the things I was doing at that age. And then here I am when my daughter is that age. I'm actually going to like these birthday parties, and I'm going to like band practice, and I'm doing all this stuff, and how grateful I am. I was that kid that went around with his mom from dope house to dope house and hung out with her. I would get dropped off at her drug dealer was my babysitter, like all that stuff. Like I'm a prodigy of that environment, like how you talked about, like parents getting loaded and the kids just right there inside that trailer is exactly how it was for me.
Wow.
And so and
your whole life.
Yeah, for I mean the toxic and abuse and everything that comes in with that relationship as a mom trying to raise their kids, and all the men that come into life, you know, and the abuse and the struggle. And I was a prodigy of all that. And to be there, and then I sort of went down that same route with my daughter, taking my daughter out, you know, in the beginning. That's exactly why I was taking this little girl around doing the same stuff. No different, you know.
It's crazy how something that is so traumatic to us and uncomfortable and, you know, wrong. Like we know it's wrong, but then it's so common for us to do that to our children. I
think too, even though it was so wrong, like when we're doing that and we're in it, do we really feel that that's wrong? Like when I was doing all that stuff, my perception and that's that delusion that we live in. And when we're in that psychosis of drugs and alcohol, is like, I really didn't think that it was that bad or that I was doing something wrong. Like, I know what I thought was wrong is like, man, I shouldn't be driving around with no driver's license right now. Right? Like, because I didn't have no driver's license, yes. You know, I didn't have
anything that's going to cause some legal trouble and consequences for yourself, not the consequences for her.
Not the consequences. Like, she's in a car seat, she's safe, right? But like, man, I'm in a stolen car with no driver's license, pretending it's like it's mine with a stolen plate just for that day, and I'm taking her to, you know, and I'm like, just wait in the car one more time, wait in the car, you know. And
that's not the concern. It's you get arrested and you can't, you know, you're going to have to detox in jail.
Yeah, that's the fear. Arrested with her and you know and stuff like that. If that's the concern, like I wasn't worried. Everything I thought I since I didn't get caught, I thought, oh, I'm doing fine.
Right.
I'm doing fine.
But growing up, it was harmful and hurtful as a kid seeing your mom, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm still you know, going through all that stuff and growing up as a kid, like going through all that stuff, like my mom getting beat up all the time and like, you know, moms, you know, like her accountability and all that stuff as growing up, you become what happens. I think you really become like an independent child. I really think that you grow up really fast and you start taking care of yourself and you stop putting so much reliance on the parents and you start and they talk about people growing up so fast. Like, well, exactly what I did is I grew up so fast. And not only that, I had a little sister. And so like, here I am. I feel like I even though there was no father around, I stepped into this father role or a dad role, you know, because I think it's just like a natural thing for a kid to do. And like, don't worry, I can do my own. Like, my mom went to the laundromat with my clothes and lost them. Like, showed up. Like, I must have left them there. Right. And then you're not doing my laundry no more, Mom. Right. You know,
I'll do my own
laundry. Like, Mom, can you wait? My mom would fall asleep at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she wouldn't wake up to be able to wake me up for school. So I woke up as a kid. I got ready, right? I had some chores, even though I didn't have chores, and I went about my day and just let my mom sleep, you know?
Right.
And I think that as kids that go through all that stuff become really independent and strong-minded in people.
What age do you feel you started getting curious of drugs?
As curious as in using them, or curious as in like I never had a stage of drugs and alcohol were around my whole life, and experimenting. I was in junior high, and like I said, my mom's she was with a drug dealer, and I always saw what was happening. My mom would always she'd be up for days on end, and all of a sudden she'd come in, she would tell me to hold her stuff, and my friends would come over. There was no rules at my house. If my mom was up, there was no rules. People just come to my house. We do, there's really not much to eat or anything like that, but that just come to my house. We can
do whatever we want.
We can smoke some weed. We can drink liquor. And then my mom would leave her back then it was even methamphetamine. It was that biker dope, crank, just leave the crank in there, and I'd be like, you guys want to do some of this, and yeah, that was it for us. And
so you got your first experience of drugs was drugs from your mom?
No, my first experience was drugs from my mom's drug dealer, and I hang out with him all the time, and I was rolling around with him and I was in junior high, so I must have been in a 7th, 8th grade, and he'd roll around and he had a bullet, and I just remember he carried around his neck like a lot of people have it for the cocaine, and we'd be driving, from Antelope Valley to downtown LA, and he'd pull out and I remember the exact moment, he was like, hey, here, he hand me it, and he's like, here's a spoon, dip it in, put it to my nose because I'm driving, and then he's like, do one. And with no hesitation. I think I was waiting for that day to happen, right?
Why do you think that is? You just knew that was
because growing up in that kind of environment or anything like that, why would you think that's not normal in any other way?
Right.
I thought that was I thought it was my next step into manhood or anything like this. And this guy being a father figure, I'm gonna listen to him, right? I think it's a lot of life is about the people you have around you, right? And these people around me, if you look up to all these people, it doesn't matter the circle of people, but the circle of people that you are with at this time. It doesn't matter if you're in the trailer, you look up to those people, you're just going to do what they're doing.
Right. Did your mom know that you were using?
I mean, yeah, she came, all of a sudden my room is clean, right? I'm chopping firewood, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing stuff, how could she not? But did she say anything? No. And I remember the first time, when I started selling drugs, and the first time I came home and I told her to stop buying drugs from any other person and buy them from me.
Oh, wow. And how old were you?
I probably was 14.
Jesus.
14 years old. I was in high school. And from that, my mom never really, and I don't think that she ever put a stop or anything like that to me. And she might have tried saying things to me and stuff like that, but by that time I was so addicted and so just invested that was my way of life. I started doing all that stuff, but another thing, a kid growing up with nothing, poor in that trailer, I call this little place little Alcatraz and all this stuff where I was at,
right.
And there's homeless people in the backyard, the front yard, the side yard, all around us, and the addiction was in every tent, trailer, camper, shed, everything that was right there on that property, and then boom, it was just I started selling to all those people, and I got addicted to that way of turning that into kind of money to get the stuff I need.
Right.
I felt that manipulation of using this for that, and you get addicted to that.
Right. Well, how old were you when you were first incarcerated?
17, 16, 17. I got
for
busted.
Selling?
GTA. I was stranded at the fellows' houses, and I really wanted to go home, and I jumped in a stolen car that was parked around the corner, and I got very close to my house. It was late at night, it was during witching hour, which I shouldn't have been driving anyways, but I got pulled over, and it was my first GTA, and then shortly after that I get busted again, and from that point until I was 33, I was in and out of jail my whole life, and that's all I did.
In and out. No fear the first time? Did you have any fear?
sort of, since I grew up with the guys I grew up with, like they already been to prison and all that stuff. So when I was at the drug, my mom's drug dealer's boyfriend's house, he's been to prison. Most of the people around there all been to prison. So like they would have me sweeping and doing things, and they'd be like, and I didn't understand, like they'd be like, get used to that, and I got used to that, and everything they showed me was all the stuff that you learn in prison,
Right.
And the sweeping, the mopping, the flushing, the flushing of the toilet, the washing your dishes, your cup, or one thing at a time type thing like that. All that is sort of stuff that I learned from this guy. And when I went in, I was scared, but I don't think I was that scared.
Right. Did you feel like it was the next step of, like you said, using drugs as the next phase to, being a man? Did you feel that was just part of the process too, from the way you were being raised, jail, and then it's going to lead to prison?
Yeah, I just felt like after I've been in there, I get busted as a young kid, and I never really thought like I went to something different or anything like that. I go out, and it was more or less like it saved my life. And being incarcerated, getting out, and being like, my disease never really hit me as hard as when I stepped out off the bus from prison, or from I got out of county jail, and that my disease would be on hold until I walked out.
It was just like a break, right?
Free man, and I walk out, and my decision was always to and that gateway. I go get me a 40 of whatever I could get. And from there, I smoke it, and then I put a needle in my arm. And I think that going through prison, I think a lot of that too keeps you. It really gets you. I didn't think it at the time. You don't know it, but being in there and you get into this routine of life. And I think life now is a lot about, disciplines. And I always talk about that freedom through discipline. Right. I lived an undisciplined life out there. And I always thought, like, wow, I always see these other people living with things, and I didn't know how much discipline it takes to be able to keep all that stuff.
Right. And
I walk into a prison, and they get you into this program of going to work, or going to work, and you go back to your house, right? You get laundry on Thursdays, you go to the
normal
store on this
routine
day.
Is like, what?
A normal routine of stuff. Like,
right.
I don't know nothing about that.
Right.
And that discipline that they teach you inside those walls can go a long way if you use it right when you get out.
Right.
And I didn't know, like I said, I don't know nothing different at this point. By this time, I didn't talk to my dad and the family for like over 20 years.
Wow.
I didn't talk to that little girl for 9 years. I was full-fledged in my disease, and when she was being born, and instead of being there to watch her be born, I went away to get loaded. Like, I went downstairs. I told her, Mom, I'll be right back, and like she knew. She knew. I probably lived in that delusion of I was just going to go downstairs and smoke a cigarette. Right. But I live in this delusion, and I go downstairs and I smoke that cigarette, and I think that one more time I can get away with just getting loaded. If I can get loaded just a little bit right now, and I'll come right back. Like, I got time. And the one thing you don't got when you're out there getting loaded is time. Like, my time just flies
by. Tuesday
to Saturday.
Right, exactly. Yeah, year to year. What made you want to change?
A lot of I went through one sobriety, or one I like, it wasn't like I woke up one day and was like, damn, I really need to get clean and sober. Like,
right. I mean, it was a lifestyle to you. That's all you knew.
It was my full-fledged. It was my lifestyle. It was just what I knew. I thought for sure that I would die behind the walls, or inside prison, or life in prison. And I was cool with not having no education, driver's license, not talking with my family and friends, or like, I totally like checked out from life. And I was utterly defeated. I remember I went through this treatment facility, even though I didn't like make it work, but they sort of planted a seed in me. And for the very first time I went to court, I had 168 traffic tickets. I never had a driver's license my whole life. And now I'm in my first treatment center, and they're like, well, you got to start taking care of some of this wreckage. And so
was it court appointed?
Court appointed, but I couldn't go to that court date until I finished my program, which was like 90 days. And then after 90 days, I was able to go to court, and I went to court with all these letters of recommendation from a parole officer program and all this stuff. And everybody was like, you know, they're gonna let you go and just cite you, you know. And I went in there and they maxed me on and everything as far as they could on county and gave me time on top of that. And I remember that walk, and I walked from that in that courtroom. I walked into the back, into the little holding tank before they take you down into GP, general population, and I'm sitting there on this cold concrete bench, and I'm looking at the cell door, man, and it just seems like something inside of me, like some tears come down my eyes, you know. Something deep down inside of me was like, man, like something got to give. Like I was utterly defeated, right? Like I was sick and tired of going to jail and doing time. I was, you know, and that's you know, I don't think at that point I thought about using and drinking, but I was like tired of doing time. And I walked out, and the guy came and got me, man. And it was like, you know, that guy came and got me, the jailer, and he brought me downstairs, and I put that guy, you know, that guy who I know, who I live, you know, I grew up inside those walls, so like going in there, I was a different beast, an animal. And I like to say that I stayed sober, but I got out and I did exactly what I do the best. I went out there, I got drunk, I got loaded, I started shooting heroin, you know, and I can't stop. I'm calling that treatment center I was at, I'm demanding my stuff back, right? And they're like, just come get it. I'm like, you know, I'm coming. I'm coming to get it. Don't worry, right? And I call them the next day, like, I'm coming. I'm coming. They're like, Garet, man, just come get your stuff and stop calling us. And what happens is I don't know what happens, but like something has to break. But I'll tell you what happens is I go to jail again. I stuff happens on Valentine's Day of 2013. I'm in a shootout on the streets. I'm homeless. I'm broke. I don't have nothing left. I don't want to, even though I don't even want to see my daughter or my family. I don't want to see nobody. Like, I'm so disgraced and embarrassed about the person who I am today, right? Like I'm out there and like I'm so far-fetched from reality and disappointed in who I am. Like, I don't want you to know who I am in my disease, right? Like, we really, like, I give up on any kind of world. Like, I would trade places. Like, you can have all that stuff, just let me be. I'm in my disease, and here I am. I'm early in the morning. I'm in this I'm getting shot at by this guy, you know, Valentine's Day morning. I call that person all those gangsters call. Like, when we get in trouble, I call my mom, you know. I get loaded with my mom again. She drops me off at a liquor store, and an off-duty officer recognized me. And that was always funny because I always thought like someone ratted on me. Like, I always want like a good excuse, but I think I'm just so tall. I'm just so tall, like I stick out from the normal person, and they spotted me.
Like, someone had to rat me out.
Someone had to rat me out. Don't you know who I am? Like, I ain't nobody, right? I just walked from a liquor store to this house down the street, you know, and an off-duty officer recognized me, followed us to the house, and they took me to jail one more time. And at that time, like, I was in my disease and I wasn't thinking about getting sober. I'm getting loaded in jail. I'm drinking hand sanitizer with top ramen packets on it, just to get that feeling of ease and comfort that you get from that drunk or drug, right? I'm eating happy cards, right? I'm like in the reality of it, like, I'm somebody inside the system, right? But I'm a nobody on the streets because I run away from everything because I just want to get loaded. Like, I just want to feel any other way than how I feel when I'm not loaded.
Right. And
on March 17th, I arrived at this treatment center, and it was like, I never gave it no thought or anything like that. But I'll tell you that it's always the kindness of others, right? It's never something like we really ever say or hear or anything like that. But this guy that I knew came up, and I saw him. I'm sitting there in my head at this treatment center, and everything I got is I got my 5 to Life shower shoes, a blue, you know, light blue, a blue jumpsuit, you know, see-through jumpsuit, bright green boxers, and I'm sitting there, you know, with a clear plastic bag, and this guy that I know comes over, man, and I'm debating because if someone would have stood up, I would have went with them, and he comes over to me, man. He says, "Hey, Garet, big bro, so good to see you." And the next thing he did is he gave me a big old warm welcoming hug. And he hugged he hugged me. And then he said the next thing I never heard, he said, "Garet, man, I got 9 months." And then for a guy that doesn't know nothing about sobriety, like, what is 9 months? What do you mean you got 9 months, right? Like that's like a different language. 9 months of what, you know? And he says, "I hope to see you a little later. I'm on a pass right now." And I think that was that first formality of surrender that it took for me to go in there. And it was a surrender there and a decision that a person has to make for himself. Because I believe a lot of it is like a lot of people get decisions made for them. And so it makes it easier to step out of it because, you know, like if my daughter, I was doing this for my daughter or my parents or, you know, or for the save the marriage or whatever or my job, like I need to stay sober for this job. And so we get put in these places. But like I honestly walked into this office on a decision built that I, you know, finally came to the conclusion, like I was utterly defeated. And I said, I'll stay. And I made that commitment to myself, man, that surrender, you know, to the program and you know, that surrender and then that commitment to the program. And I just stayed and I walked through everything I had to walk through from that point forward without taking a drink, drug or anything inside my system. And you walk through stuff here, you know, it prepares you. The program prepares you for a lot of stuff. I wasn't emotionally able to or prepared to handle a lot of the baffling situations that come across here, you know.
Right. Wow. And here you are now.
And here I am now.
That's crazy.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, that's inspiring. That's some shit, you know? I mean, that's
the clean version.
Yeah, right. I'm sure we can go into all the fun details. We've all got those stories. Just curious. I mean, how's your mom now?
You know, my mom passed away.
Addiction.
I don't know. It's sometimes I feel like, you know, as I got clean and sober, that my mom, you know, I'll tell you this. I'm gonna put it to you as this is at 8 years, or at between 7 and 8 years for me. I do a lot of work in the program to really get me to a level, and I rebuilt that and rekindled that relationship with my daughter, but also with my dad, who I didn't talk to for 20 years, you know? And so that was another uncomfortable situation of walking into and what happens really when we get uncomfortable, we really don't want to be there. Right. It takes like just staying put and just being acceptance of whatever the situation. And I built this, you know, relationship and made these amends, and then my dad passed away, and it was sudden, and man, it just really like it really gets into that emotional sobriety probably, you know. Right. And 11 months later, you know, my mom passes away. My mom's like my biggest hero. I don't care. She did the best she can with raising me. I have no resentments. I know when I was at the hospital with her and I'm in the room and my son, you know, he's like 3 years old and he runs out the door and I run after him and I pick him up, you know, and he's giggling. I pick him up. He's nice to me to chase him, you know, but I turned around and I looked back and I see my mom looking out that door at me. And it was at that time, like there's never no words that ever had to be placed because the way that she looked at me just said it all. Because my actions up to that point, my mom, and just like with my daughter, just like with my dad, and with my mom, like the actions that I put forward was way more than I ever said in my whole life. Right.
Wow. I mean, and you hold on to that, you know?
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
My mom now, I think it was this was the second Christmas. I remember it was.
So recent.
Recent. Yeah, recent. It's still like I was still this holiday missing my mom, you know? I still have the presents like the last year, like she came through and she gave these my son, she bought my son. She called me up and she bought some presents for my kids, you know. And I even though like my mom, whether or not she was in her addiction or something, see, I healed. I went and did enough work on myself that I could put myself in the situation. At first, when I was early in my sobriety, it was hard for me to go into those situations, like where my mom was living or what she was doing or who she was with, you know, all that stuff. And I can't control that. I have no control over the situations. I just know that I love my mom. Yeah. You know. And just the same way I love my dad, and I go there and they all be drinking, and they don't use and all that stuff, but the liquor is a drug in any aspect, and being around that is just as hard sometimes as being around at a dope house, and I go there and I see my mom, and I introduce her to her grandsons, and I dress her grandsons up the way that the pictures that I do have and the memories I do have, I dress her kids up in the same way. And I see him, and then I see my mom looking, and I'd be like, does he look like me? You know, does he look like me? And she'd be like, yeah, he looks like you, you know, and stuff like that. Just brings, that's the stuff, brings tears to my eyes.
I know.
Here, you know?
You're bringing tears to my eyes.
You know, and I love it. And this is the thing is that, this is another thing. I love saying, man, and this is what it is. And it goes back to that time when I was sitting there in that recovery in that front, I was sitting in that front lobby and I'm talking about like that being on the fence, you know, and it's like, you know, God's on one side and the devil's on one side and this guy's in this casket and he comes out of this casket and he goes up and he's leaning there up on the fence and the devil looks at his people and he's like, come on, let's walk away, and the God looks at his people and he's like, let's walk away. And what they're doing is like they're letting this guy, you know, make the decision of which way he wants to go in life. And the devil all of a sudden goes and he looks at his disciples and he's like, hey, I forgot something over there. And what the devil forgets, I don't know. But he turned around and he walked back over to where these people are at, right? Where this guy was there. And the guy sees him coming and he's like, oh, whoa. He's like, hey, I'm not going with you. He's like, I'm still making a decision. And the devil looks at him and he says, well, you know, I just want to let you know that the fence that you're leaning on belongs to me. So you might as well go ahead and walk this way. And for so long, what it was is I never made a decision for myself. I was on the fence about everything. And I say once I got off that fence and I made a decision for myself, and I went. When I honestly made that decision for myself, and I went at it, man. Like I strived in it. Like right. I won it. Man, still to this day, like I still gotta have that action. I still gotta be hungry for this recovery. Because I'm gonna tell you what happens after you get here for 10 years or 5 years or maybe 7 years or maybe even 3 years. Like you get like mundane and like it's like, you know, oh man, like this isn't exciting no more, right? Is it like it's not like the enthusiasm of recovery. Like I'm passionate and enthusiasm about it. Like I love it. Still to this day, I love it. Because I'm still in the works and in the trenches seeing the work that it does, that God does in other people's life just as much as he's done in mine. Right. You know, could we see, like, we'd be able to see that work, man. And it brings tears in my eyes. No, to watch now that I went through all the stuff to watch other people go through it, the families that we bring back together and the lives that you save, it's just like, man, like there is no gift greater in the money. I've been doing so much and like those gifts are good. But they wear off, man. But when I sit there and a mother hugs her son that hasn't talked to her in 20 years, I know. Or when the son got clean and sober, and now all of a sudden the mom's like, you know, clean and sober, and they're going to meetings together, and it's that little bit, and they're like, thank you, and you're like, and in a way you're like, what I didn't do nothing, right? Because in the brightest day, I'm what I am is I'm an example around here of what to do. Right. You know, and people just it's literally the greatest joy, and I feel like. Not saying that people who can't relate can't sympathize with that or understand, but I feel, and I mean, you said it perfectly, and I say it all the time, and I have so much gratitude around the fact that we have the greatest gift I feel there ever possibly even could be in this entire world, and that is our own recovery to see other people recover. Is just, no one can even compare any other pure joy in someone's heart other than someone who has gone through the trenches, such as yourself. And you too. Don't give yourself credit too. Come all on, of us, now, right? I mean, we've gone through some we've faced death in the face. I mean, straight up, you know, and we live a beautiful life to be able to see so many people go through it. And we have the patience and the love and the compassion for those who are struggling in their darkest. I mean, I've had things thrown at me. I've been called the worst names, but I know that's their addiction speaking, and that they're hurting so much that it gives me the patience to work with them that much more, you know? Yeah. And I mean, we work in recovery. Have you seen A Good Person? Not recently.
Oh, it's a good one.
I'm going to watch it on my flight home.
Oh, yes. You absolutely have to. It is so good and so powerful. I mean, it's like, that's all I do every single day, you know, is help people and be here for people. And I still will watch the movies and watch the prison shows and the jail shows. And it's just my life, you know, because there's so much hope for anyone that's still going through it. And that's just like, your story is just so inspiring. I feel like it's going to touch so many people. I mean, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you're doing amazing things, and I am just personally so proud of you. And you are an amazing person, amazing father, and there's no greater gift that you could give all three of your children than the gift of your own recovery. You know?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. What are some things that you hold on to, whether it's words or a quote that you tell yourself when times do get tough? Because we still, I mean, you've, even in your recovery, I mean, you've lost both your parents in that, you know, in that phase. Like, what do you hold on to when things get hard?
My sobriety. You know, when things get tough, I say this as being a pillar in the recovery community of or people around you and stuff like that. I'm just as, there is no person above another person around here in that community, and we all go through stuff, the ebbs and flows of life. And what I hold on to is that the prayers, man. I think at the more the stuff that I went through is really what really brought me closer and closer into God, you know. And it really and the things that stuff happens to your life, you really see it, what's like important and really what matters in life, you know. And like people's opinions, I mean, it's just like, that's just their opinions, right? You know, when you're here doing the work and stuff like that, there's nothing that can stop. You know, words can in vain can use against me, or in vain, you know, they don't hurt, you know. And what happens, like when I go through stuff, like I would listen, it seems like, I don't know, the God shots from like other people. I like to go to places where I don't, you know, where I can, maybe a smaller meeting where I don't have to speak, and I listen for the God shots that come from other people. And I remember I was listening to this speaker, and like they would say stuff, and I write it down, and I keep this little red book, and I write down the speaker stuff, and you know, and when that's a prayer, you know, or whatever it is, like in the hard times, I just know that the hard times won't last. Right. And I know that in the hard times, that my program, what matters is me, you know, not letting the emotions that I'm going through affect my day-to-day life. You know, if I'm mad at something or depressed about something, like I can't be bringing that out on people around me. Like I got to stay efficient in the work that I do around here. You know, and I number one, I say this is that when I go back into the ebbs of flows, and like you know, and we get into that 12 step, and I find out that we're at our best when we're working with another alcoholic. And my main thing is like I hear a lot of excuses of people saying that, oh, I did that because I'm an alcoholic or because I'm an addict. And I think that what we do is that if we're blaming that stuff, a lot of it is that we do it because we're still self-centered and selfish. Right. And I try to let the program, and I try to heal myself and to grow spiritually, mentally, and physically, you know, and all those aspects of life, and continue to keep on going better and better at it, because the more I heal and the more I can go through, and the stuff and the battles that we go through, and sometimes I have to draw away, and I have to draw closer to God, and I have to really double up on my program, and my life is like after 10 years, my life, it like really like your head really, it seemed like my head really went off on a lot of stuff, and I had to like reground myself into the program of doing work, and I had to change. Right. I had to go in, like the hurting, not change, like coming in here to the program and not changing is horrible. Totally. Right. Coming into the program and doing the 12 steps, and it's not letting the program flow through you. Like I have to let this 12 steps in this program flow through me, because they always say that when water flows and it goes into a pool or something like that, is dirty water, but when the water that flows is a clear water. And so I have to take, I'm not, the situations that happen and the stuff that goes through, I walk through that stuff with dignity and grace, because it's one day that I might meet somebody who's going through the same thing, and I want to be able to help them. Absolutely. You know, and God, and I'm going to tell you, God and prayer is what got me through all that stuff that I walked through, man. Like, and being Like my dad died, or I was on my Harley in the morning going to Laughlin with a bunch of guys, and my sister called me that morning, and she's like, your mom had a stroke and she's going to the hospital. Call me back. We stop and get gas. Like I call her, and she's like, they're doing an operation. There's a 95% chance that mom's not going to live. And you're like, I'm on my bike, and I got this helmet on. I got tears coming down my eyes. I'm like inside. I'm not telling nobody. And like I get to Laughlin on my bike, and my mom passed away. My sister's like, I went in there and I pulled a plug because I didn't want to see her mom as a vegetable. Right? And I don't want to see my mom as a vegetable either.
Right.
The memories I have of my mom, of how I left her, beyond that's what I hold on to.
Yeah.
Right. And what got me through all that stuff was is letting the program work in my life, and letting people help me. I'm not one to I have to be helped sometimes, just like I help people.
100%. It's always okay to have somebody there for us.
Yeah.
In every area and aspect of our life. Well, Garet, thank you so much for coming on. You've been an amazing story, your amazing testimony, and awesome recovery. And you're walking proof of it, that anybody can get through it no matter what they've gone through. If people want to reach out to you, follow your journey, how do they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Garet Mcleandon. Garet Mcleandon, 1R1T, Garet Mcleandon, man. Look it up. And follow me. Yeah, please follow me on Instagram. But yeah, please get a hold of me in any way possible. If you get a hold of me on Instagram, I'll give you my number. If you want to talk recovery, if you do whatever it is, please reach out.
Appreciate you.